You can hear me, everyone? We'll start in 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Request everyone to be on mute. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope I am audible. Quite audible, right? There is no problem. Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this first of the kind of GST training program, which is started by our firm. This is an experiment which we have started. Still some few members are joining. So anyway, we will not wait for anybody because the time is 9. So we'll start sharp by 9. So first and foremost, I request everybody to keep their audio on mute, means your mic on mute, and relax. It's not a study classroom where I'll be talking, you'll be listening, and you'll be tensed. Relax. Uh, Take it as a very simple class. Though GST is very complicated law, it was supposed to be a very simple law, but then it has become to be very complicated. But I'll try to make it as simple as possible so that everybody understands. As far as possible, take notes, because there will be some points which may not be there in the PPT. So you may write some points which may come in the flow. So take notes wherever possible. PPT, whatever we are presenting will be provided to you at the end of the session. We'll put it in the WhatsApp group. Video link also will be shared to you. So basically this program is not like a classroom program. It will be very interactive program. So I want you also to be equally interactive, though not through audio. There is a chat, there's a chat facility available. So I'll be asking questions, or if you have anything, you can put it in the chat. So I can view it. So we can have the interaction in the chats. So you can just see where the chat is and then be ready, because I'll be asking few questions. So then you can participate in that. Any query in between, if you get that also, you can put it in the chat. But let the query be related to the day's topic. Let us not deviate from the day's topic. So whatever we are discussing today, if any questions related to that, I think you can ask the question. If possible, I will answer it. Language, I will try to stick to English language, because there are participants from different states. So we have people, I think, from participants from Bombay, Chennai, Bangalore. There are from different places. So we'll stick to English, though some participants have requested to speak in Tamil. So now it will be difficult, more difficult, because we have divergent participants here. So we'll stick to our English language one. Now we have almost like 37, 38 participants. So we'll start the chat. Okay. Now, GST knowledge. What is the knowledge you think you have got? You're layman, you say low, medium, good. So low means my knowledge is low. Medium means I know a little bit. I'm half here, half neither here, nor neither there. And good means, yeah, I've got a pretty good knowledge about GST. So let me see the basic feel of our participants, what they are, whether they know GST a little bit. Chat. Low, medium, good. Medium, low. Low, sir. Good, you didn't say loafer. Medium, medium. Okay. I think everybody has not put it. That's all. Yeah, low, medium. Okay. So those who are low, they are good. Because I suggest starting this program, you unlearn everything of GST. Because what happens is we carry the baggage of the old laws, as well as whatever we have heard from others and whatever you have read. Maybe that is true, maybe that is right. But before starting this program, I suggest you unlearn everything. You start from zero, fresh mind. You think you at this point you think I don't know anything about GST. From that you start and see something new you can learn. Maybe you may be knowing that before, but if you think I don't know and then unlearn and then start learn, maybe something new you can learn. So unlearn everything what you know about GST, and let us hope I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So let us see how far you can be good in that after 10 days. So this is a 15 hours program. So 10 days, 1.5 hours each. So in 15 hours, covering the whole gamut of GST is very difficult, because each topic of GST will take 15 hours to learn. So the whole GST subject itself, if you have to cover in 15 hours, it is very, very difficult. So what we have planned or we have arranged is we will be actually covering the basics. That is, we will not go deep into each subject. We will just go and cover the basics of every topic. So at least you will know what is the basics. So let it be valuation, let it be place of supply, let it be return. So we'll just go on the basics and we will not go into detail. So once you complete this 15 hours, you will have a basic understanding of the subject. Then on a case to case basis, we will go deeper. Like suppose we have levy and collection. Avian collection, we will go just overview of it, and then our separate class we can do it after these 10 days, which will go deeper. So each subject we can go deep and then analyze it. So I think that is the plan, because 15 hours is too short to understand the whole GST. There may be some connection issues also, we don't know, because internet sometimes is not predictable. So there may be some connectivity issues. So don't worry. Suppose I get disconnected while speaking, hold on. I'll come back within 1 minute or 2 minutes. Don't run away. So I apologize if there is a connectivity, but immediately we'll rectify and come back. With this, let us start the session. Show a thumbs up. Done. So I'll just put the presentation and then we can straight away start. You can see the screen. Yeah, just a second. So Arnold Bennett has told any change, even a change for the better, is always accompanied by drawbacks and discomforts. This is so true with GST. We were actually in our olden 3 years before, we were carrying the baggage of so many other laws. GST is a very big change which happened in our country in the indirect tax area. So this big change will not happen unless there is small discomfort, there is small drawbacks. Because this is such a big decision government has taken. And a country of ours where we have diversified people, diversified businessmen, a businessman in Gujarat, a businessman in Tamil Nadu, a businessman in Punjab. These three are totally different kind of businessmen. And bringing one law to all these three businessmen is going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. So there is a pain, but in the end of the pain, always, I think there will be a good thing written for us. So let us wait where we can see a better of GST. Now, why I'm telling this is, initial seed of GST actually, many people will not know, but it was actually sown by our Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister, who's no more, Atal Bihar Vajpayee, in year 2000. Now, 2000 was the first, Atal Bihari Vajpayee took the first step of implementing GST. He formed a committee in the year 2000. And when it got introduced in July 2017. 17 years it took for GST to get implemented in our country. Every budget, if you see from 2000 till 2015, 2016, you can see all the budgets mentioned about GST, and they told, you'll always see that one sentence: this year there will be a committee formed and this committee will review, but there is no major step taken by any government to actually implement it. So we should compliment this government who have taken this step in the year 2015 to really start the process of discussion with the states, with the stakeholders. And in 2016, they amended the constitution to implement GST. So it is really a commendable job, where you can see 15, 16 years went in discussing and doing nothing. And within 1 or 2 years, with the determination, this government came and implemented, maybe with flaws. Like we have told, there is a pain. It's not easy to implement such a big law. But with that pain also, they actually brought all these stakeholders together, states together, and hats off to our ex-finance minister, Jaitley, who did lot of efforts and convinced all the states and ensured that GST is brought in. Finally, on 30th June midnight, the whole parliament was jam-packed. And in that parliament, our honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he implemented the indirect tax reform in our country. So now a lot of states like Maharashtra recently, they told we'll roll back to the old system because GST has failed. I want to ask, or just think of the people who are there in last 15, 20 years in the industry or in practice, the old laws. If again you tell them, okay, again this excess duty and VAT is going to come, their reaction will be, my God, I don't want this again. So even though GST has got some problems, but it is far, far better than you had multiple laws during that time, and people don't want, or industry doesn't want that to come back. Now, why this GST was brought in? What was the requirement of, or such an urgency for the GST to come? Double taxation. If you see, you had VAT, you had service tax, you had excise duty. If you pay excise duty, you could not adjust the excise duty against some other tax like VAT. If you pay VAT, you cannot adjust against service tax. So you had different types of taxation, but you could not adjust. So there was tax on tax. So to avoid that, GST was required. It was hindering the economic growth because there were so many multiple taxes, tax on tax. The economic growth of the country was not going the level we expected. So that was hindering our economic growth. There was distorting competition. Each state had their own VAT laws, their own different kind of laws. And if you see somebody doing business in Maharashtra had an advantage of somebody doing business in Uttar Pradesh. So there was a distorted competition, high compliance cost. We had some 17 indirect tax laws which got subsumed in GST. Each 17 different laws had different compliance. So to meet that compliance, there was an extra cost there. Frequent amendments in those laws. So 17 laws had 17 amendments. To monitor those amendments itself was a challenge. Administrative complexities, lack of uniformity in provision and rates. So VAT rate may be different in one state, it will be different in another state. So there was no uniformity in taxes. There was no uniformity in the tax laws. So that also was difficult. If an industry has got presence in different states, they have to read each state laws to understand, because it was different. Interpretational issues, because you have so many laws, interpretation itself will be different. Input tax credit as per VAT will be different in one state, whereas in other state. And cascading effect. Cascading effect means, again, tax on tax. That what tax you pay, you cannot adjust against the tax when you go in that flow. And it was having a tax on tax effect, and there was a cascading effect. Now I want to ask the participants, the model which our country has adopted, GST, is this model good? Because many people say we have got one of the worst GST models in the world. What do you feel? Whether the model what our country has adopted is good? From a layman language. Just in the chat box, I want to see. Okay. Appears to be good. Venugopal. What about others? Okay. Complicated. It's good. Excellent. Oh. Compared to old system, it is far better, has increased cost. Good. But to understand it is very complicated. Okay. We have dual GST, it's convenient. Okay. Okay, stop. Okay. Now, if you see the models of GST law adopted in different countries, you will come to know what we have adopted and why we have adopted. There is a system of national GST. National GST means there is only one GST collected by only one authority, like a national GST means only center will levy GST, and center will levy GST and give it to the states. That was one model which is actually adopted in Australia and China. So they have this national GST. States doesn't have GST. It's only the center which has GST. There is something called state GST. So here center will not have GST, state will have GST, and center will not have, maybe they may share, they may not share, but state will collect the GST. That is adopted in USA. Non-current dual GST. Non-current dual GST means in erstwhile regime you had, we will cover that in next slides, where the goods will be taxed by the states, where our constitution gave power for the states to tax goods. Services was taxed by the center, and interstate movement of goods was taxed by the center. So in non-current dual GST, no constitutional amendment is required. So center will tax services, state will tax goods. So how it is, it was before, it will remain the same. Only thing is the name will change from VAT to GST, service tax to GST, excise to GST. So that was the non-current dual GST model. Current dual GST model is, concurrent dual GST model is both center and state will levy. So both will levy, which is there in Brazil and Canada. There is one more model which is adopted only in Canada, that is Quebec model. Quebec means states collect and pass on the center share. So the collection authority is one, that is the state authority, and they pass on the center share. So that is a Quebec model, which is in the province of Canada. So which model India adopted? India adopted concurrent dual model. Concurrent dual model means center will charge CGST, state will charge SGST. So both the center and state, both will charge tax, because we are in the federal country. We adopt the federal kind of system. Our constitution gives power both to the state and to the center to tax. And this basic right, or this given to the central and state, they didn't want to change it. So we adopted this concurrent dual model where both have got the right, but only thing is goods and service, before goods was by states, service was by the center. Now goods and service will be by the state, as well as goods and service will be by the center. So both have got the right to tax on both goods as well as services. The center will levy CGST, state SGST, and union territory UTGST. Now, what are the taxes subsumed in GST? If you see central taxes, central excise duty, additional excise duty levied under Medicinal and Toilet Preparation Excise Duty Act, service tax, central sales tax, additional customs duty, that is also called contravailing duty, special additional duty of customs, that is SAD, and central cesses and surcharges. So these are the central taxes which got subsumed in GST. So these acts are no more there. They got subsumed in GST. In state, it is VAT or sales tax in some states, entertainment tax, unless it is levied by the local body. So municipality or the local body can actually still tax entertainment tax. Tax on lottery, betting and gambling gone, purchase tax gone, state cesses and surcharge also gone, and octroi and entry tax also gone. So these are the taxes subsumed in GST. Which are the taxes not subsumed in GST? Central taxes, basic customs duty, still there. Customs duty like anti-dumping duty, safeguard duty to safeguard our domestic products. Still this anti-dumping duty, safeguard duty is there. Export duty also there. In state taxes, road and passenger taxes, toll tax, property tax, stamp duty, electricity duty, professional tax, and mandi tax. This all still exists and it is not coming under GST. Now, to bring GST, like I told, goods were actually taxed by states and services by center. So they required the constitutional amendment to bring GST. So pre-GST, how it was, the constitution had a union list, a state list, and the concurrent list. Now, union list means the center will have the power to tax the items mentioned in union list. So those lists are customs duty, central sales tax, excise duty, service tax. So this came in the part of union list, where union central government will have the power to tax this item. State list had excise duty on liquor, sales purchase of good, that's VAT, stamp duty, entry tax, octroi, and entertainment tax. So this became part of state list. So state had power to tax this, center on this, and there was something called concurrent list, like property transactions, registration charges, where both center as well as state had power to tax. So we had these three systems in erstwhile pre-GST era. Now also it is there. There is a union list, there is a state list, but they have modified the clauses or articles in the constitution to bring in GST. So this major amendment in constitution is called the 101st amendment 2016. So what are the key amendments is article 246 of the constitution. It gives what we had discussed in the previous slide: union list, state list, and concurrent list. So these are actually laid down by the article 246 of the constitution. Now you have to understand is, if there is a tax, this tax power has to be given to the state or center by which authority? Constitution gives power to tax. If constitution doesn't give power to tax, nobody can come and collect tax. So the power actually has to come from the constitution. So if constitution doesn't give you power to tax, you cannot. Article 265 clearly says tax can be actually given only by authority of law. So you cannot be taxed if there is no authority of law. So this constitution had to be amended so that the power is given to the state and center to implement GST. So 246 is the union list, state list, concurrent list. 246A was the addition brought in 2016 to bring in GST, where there was a dual levy of GST by parliament and states. But parliament has exclusive power to make GST law for interstate trade or commerce. So still intertrade trade or commerce is in the domain of parliament, that is the central government, and that is the center. So I'll quickly go through some few important articles of the constitution. That is 254. Article 254 is inconsistency between laws made by parliament and laws made by the state. So if there is an inconsistency between the laws by the parliament and by the state, laws made by the parliament will prevail over state laws. So if any law which is made by the state, which contravenes or which is against the law made by the parliament, then the law made by the parliament will prevail over the state laws. Article 248, residuary powers of legislation, that is 246, which was inserted in 2016. Parliament has exclusive power to make any law with respect to any matter not enumerated in concurrent or state list. So if any item is not mentioned in the concurrent or the state list, Parliament has got the power to tax that and bring it into the union list. Article 249, power of Parliament to legislate with respect to any matter in the state list in the national. If in the national interest, if Parliament wants, they can legislate and include something in state list or exclude something in state list which is in the national interest. During emergency, Article 250 says power of Parliament to legislate if in the case of emergency in the state list. 265 article, taxes not to be, this is what I was telling, taxes not to be imposed except by authority of law. So you cannot impose a tax unless there is an authority of law. 269A again was inserted for GST purpose. Levy and collection of GST in the course of interstate trade or commerce, apportioned or recommendation of GST Council, and such amount shall not form part of Consolidated Fund of India. So any amount collected as a GST collection cannot be a part of Consolidated Fund of India. Now, why this Consolidated Fund of India specifically they have mentioned is, suppose the funds goes into Consolidated Fund of India, then there are certain regulations for what purpose this fund can be used. So the Parliament has laid down, there is a rules for the utilization of the funds lying in Consolidated Fund of India. So they have specifically told any collection happening from GST they will not be going into the consolidation fund of India. Article 270, taxes levied will be distributed between union and state. So they will decide on what proportion, how that money will be distributed between union and state. And 279A is a very important clause inserted. GST, Goods and Service Tax Council, GST Council. We keep on hearing this. The GST Council is meeting, 40th meeting, 41st meeting. So GST Council, if you see the CGST or any GST acts, most of the act will say on the recommendation of the GST Council. So no GST law can be amended, changed, or made unless there is a recommendation from the GST Council. Now, GST Council consists of center as well as states. Union Finance Minister is always the chairperson of the GST Council, and states have got the 3/4 majority. So majority, 3/4 of the voting rights in GST Council belongs to states. 1/3 belongs to center. So the states have got more power in GST Council than the center. So 279A of Article 279A introduces or brings in GST Council as a statutory body. Secondly, 286, restriction on states as to imposition of tax. So states cannot impose tax on imports and exports or anything happening outside their state. 300A, now this also keeps on coming in a lot of the case laws and a lot of the court judgments where person cannot be deprived of his property. A person not to be deprived of property is saved by authority of law. That means the property of a person cannot be denied by any law. That is, if I got my right, nobody can deny that right and take away that right. So pre-GST Senvad credit, there is a recent judgment on cesses, education cess, secondary education cess, which they didn't allow to carry forward in GST. So the main contention was this Article 300A, where they told it is my right. I have got that cess as a input credit. You cannot deny that credit to me. So 300A gives you that right of property. And 301 article, you have got the freedom to do trade, commerce, and intercourse within territory of India. So nobody can stop me from doing business in any part of the country. So this is the right Article 301 gives to me to do business anywhere in India. Now, why GST is good? We told why this pre-GST, what was the drawbacks. Now we'll see why GST is good. Harmonization of taxes power under GST. So abolition of multiple layers of taxes. So there is no multiple layers of tax. There is only GST. No double taxation, like I told. Tax on tax, not there. Minimal cascading effect and seamless flow of credit. So if I purchase something, I sell, I adjust what I paid in purchases. So what I pay as tax, I get a credit for my output. Reduced complexity. So common classification. If I go, now I can do business anywhere in India. Law are the same. Law is not the same. The law is not different in one state and different in another state. It is the same everywhere. The definition what I have of GST in Tamil Nadu will be the same definition in Karnataka. So there is no complexity in understanding law, because one law, if I understand, it is applicable throughout the country. It's a one national market. So a lot of changes has happened in the business structure. Before that, because of to reduce the taxation, lot of tax planning was done. Now, because of GST, it has become one national market. You can supply from anywhere. Tax is going to remain the same. If you supply, suppose you want to supply something in Karnataka, you got a big business. You do not start a business in, start a warehouse or a setup in Karnataka. You can supply from another state. Taxation rate remains the same. So it's a common national market. Uniform compliance, what I told, laws are the same. So whatever compliance is there, it is uniform throughout the country. Extinction of checkpost. So there is no checkpost. Previously, you see, you cross any state, the first, as soon as you cross, the first thing is you'll see a lot of trucks and the goods vehicles standing. So there was a lot of corruption happening there. Now the checkposts have gone. So there is no checking of documents in the checkpost. So there is an e-way bill generation which happens, which now they say checkpost has gone in the border. Now checkpost has come throughout the state. So previously the documents were checked at the entrance. Now it can be checked anywhere in the state. So there is a squad going on in the vehicle. So they may stop any goods vehicle and check the documents. But the checkpost in the borders have gone. Increase in global competitiveness and employment opportunities. Now, since the law has it's become easy for you to do business in India, and especially for the people or the industry or the business people who have multiple branches or businesses in country, for them the conducting the business has become easy. Because it has become easy, many global companies now have started investing in India and started setting up the offices here, because there is a continuity in the policy measures of the government, and as more industries are coming in, employment opportunities also increase. And boost to the government and economy. We don't know how far it is. 3 years gone. How much boost to the government and economy we have to see. So 3 years on. So now we have almost like 3 years and 4 months from the implementation of GST. And what are the problems faced by the stakeholders? Increased compliance. Now, one of the participants had told, Pradeep had told that there is increased cost. So increased cost, increased compliance, yes. Now what has happened is, in olden regime, you will just fill up everything and give it to the government, and government will do the verification. They will check the documents. They will verify. If they find anything, they will send you the notice. Now, the government expects you to do that work and give all the data to the government, and the system will do all the calculations and all the analysis and throw open the MIS reports to the officers to review. So now the systems have become so transparent, and you are only actually filling up all the data and giving it. So the compliance everybody feels, because computers were not used much in the olden era. Now computers and the technology has taken over most of the part. And it is not in only in GST, I think even in direct taxes also, most of the things now are technology enabled. So going forward, I think whoever feels the heat of using the technology have to start using it. I think there is no other way forward. So increased compliance is one area which people are complaining. Yes, they may be reducing the compliance, which you can see in our next sessions, where the return filings and so many things are getting. I don't say it's easier, but yeah, it's changing for a good. Late fee too high. So if you don't file any return or delay filing any return, the late fee is a bomb. So it comes equal to the tax amount sometimes, and it is a real pain. So feel sometimes sorry for the taxpayers who have registered for the sake of their customers, and they've never filed their returns, and then they had to pay huge late fees to bring into line. Multiplicity of return. Multiplicity, yeah, definitely. Now, initially, everybody were thinking, okay, GST is going to be easy, and you will have only one return. But finally, you see how many returns every month you have. GSTR 1. Good thing GSTR 2 and GSTR 3 is not there. So GSTR 2, 3 means it will become 3 returns a month, 36 returns plus annual return and 99C. So almost 37, 38 returns in a year is complicated. Yes. So now at present, there is GSTR 1, which may be quarterly for small people, GSTR 3B and annual return if applicable. So multiplicity of return is a problem. Lowering of revenues. This is a big question, but yesterday's news from the government, okay, October month collection have crossed 1,05,000 crores. So that is one good news, but we don't know how far that will sustain in today's times. 1,05,000 is a good collection. But overall, if you see last 18 months or 12 months, the collections have come down and the governments are fighting for the compensation. No major reduction in prices. People expected, or the consumers expected, the prices to come down. But if you see vice versa, actually the costs have gone up. Even though inflation is low, prices have not come down as expected after the introduction of GST. Multiple tax rate is again creating lot of litigation. There are 0%, 1.5%, 2.5%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, cess. So multiple tax, and your goods may fall into 18%, may fall into 12%. You will say 12%, department will say 18%. Litigation going on. This litigation comes because there are multiple tax rates. If the tax rates are only 1, 2, most of the litigations will not be there, because even if you fall into any of the categories, you pay tax on that rate. So because of multiplicity of rate, lot of litigations and going to court, like advance ruling, divergent advance rulings. Advance ruling is an authority where you can go to an advance ruling authority if you have any doubt. Like I was telling you, your product is in 12%, you feel it is 12%, you want to clarify it, you go to the department and give a application for advance ruling. They give you a ruling based on their understanding of the subject, and you have got different advance ruling in different states. The same subject, Tamil Nadu advance ruling will give a opinion, Karnataka will give an opinion, Maharashtra will give a third opinion. So one subject will have multiple opinions. So divergent advance ruling is creating a havoc. I think this is the one area which is creating a lot of confusion, and the authority who is sitting there, who is giving the ruling, they don't apply their mind, because they are the department people. They want to favor the department, so they pass the rulings in such a way that it favors the department. So they don't take that neutral route, and a one-sided approach is creating a problem. So if you see the taxpayers details as on 30th/6/2020 as per GST website, the total number of new applications received for registration is 1,23,11,104. Number of normal taxpayers is 1,03,96,876. In that composition, taxpayers are 17,11,581. Input service distributors, we'll all come back. What is this input service distributor? Casual taxable persons, all very important things. So input service distributors, hardly 7,387 in the country. It's so important. You ought to know about ISD, but paltry only 7,387 people have registered as ISDs. Casual taxable person only 45. Possible, we'll go through that topic also. Tax collected at source registrations 9,250. Deducted at source 1,85,657. Non-resident taxpayers, only 3 people have registered. OIDAR, so that OIDAR also will come back 305. Totally 1,23,11,104 registrations. In that, migrated from the previous regime is 53,28,537. So we have almost roughly around 70 lakh new registrations in GST, whereas in the previous era it was 53,28,537. Now, what are the things you expect to be modified to improve GST? This is my opinion. GST network to be made more robust. You can see most of the time GSTN network fails. And today GST has failed. 50% of the credit goes to GSTN. The network didn't support or actually go in the same speed how that law was implemented. The network was very behind. The actual government was far ahead and IT was slow. So that is one of the reasons our GST has failed and the credit goes to GST network. So that has to be improved a lot. New GST return system. There was a GST return system to be brought in where this 1, 2, 3B and all those things will go, and the new ANX1, ANX2, return 1, return 2, all was to be brought in. Finally, government decided they will not, after so much discussion, so much of education, finally one day government decided they are not going to bring that new system. The old system itself will be modified in such a way it may be made simpler. Let us see how it goes. So new GST return system, which we will discuss in detail. Advance ruling authority, different views. I think this has to be taken a bit seriously, and advance ruling authority has to give a similar view on the same matter. And there is a national advance ruling authority which is actually created but still not notified. So something which is nationally created may give some clarity on the divergent views given by the different advance rulings. Blocked credit to be trimmed. If we say there is a cascading or there is a flow of credit in GST, but there is an artificial blockage which the government has created. They're stopping some credits like motor vehicles or like a building construction. There are some artificial blockages, foods and beverages. this is creating a natural flow of credit which is happening in the business. I think this block credit has to be trimmed in such a way that only the credits which should not be given should be blocked. All other credit should be open for the business to take. Petroleum products to be included. Now petroleum products are out of the GST network. I think it should be brought in so that the tax paid on petroleum also can be part of the business. So levy and collection. So I'll come back to the chat again. How many states are there in our country? I want to hear from others. How many states are there as on today? Yeah, 28. Okay. Some are telling 28, 29. Okay. 29 plus 7. Okay. 28 plus 8. Okay. So now we are coming to levy and collections. Levy and collection means tax has to be, like we are told, Article 265 gives power to impose tax has to be by authority of law. So something has to be taxed, means the power has to be given to tax. So when goods and services has to be taxed, the power has to be given to tax, and in GST that is called levy and collection of tax. So in GST, Section 9 of CGST Act and Section 5 of IGST Act. I'll come to what is CGST or IGST later. So they give power to tax goods and services. Now, if you see, there are 29 states. There are 7 union territories. There are 7 union territories. 2 union territories are having their own legislative assembly. That is, they've got their own assemblies. Which are those 2 states? Having their own legislative assemblies. So Pondicherry and Delhi. So wherever there is how many states are there, that many SGST acts will be there. So even though you say one nation, one tax, that is not true. There are how many states, that many SGST act. There is one CGST act. There is one IGST act, which is for interstate. So there are 29 SGST act. 2 union territories are having their own legislative assembly. So they also have their own SGST act. So you have 31 SGST act. That is 29 states plus 2 union territories, 31 SGST act, and 5 UT GST acts. That is Union Territory GST Act. Clear? So list of union territories: Andaman and Nicobar Island, Lakshadweep, Dadra, Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, Ladakh, Chandigarh. So these are the 5 union territories. So levy and collection of tax, we continue with intrastate supply, that is supply happening within the state. So if you are supplying your goods or services within the state, it is called intrastate supply. If it is supplied between 2 states, or 2 union territories, it is interstate supply. Now the thumb rule is, we will go with the place of supply and this in detail, but overview, section 7 and section 8 of IGST Act deals with interstate and you see, we have to understand why this intrastate and interstate it's very important, because the collection of tax depends on whether you are treating that supply as an intrastate or treating that supply as interstate. So you have to understand what is intrastate and interstate so that you charge the tax correctly and don't do a mistake, because if you do a mistake and find out later on, then consequences are you have to pay with means you have to pay the correct tax and get the refund of the tax which you have paid by mistake, and you know how it is, how much easy it is to collect taxes or get the refund from the department. So the thumb rule is, section 7 and section 8 of the IGST Act deal with inter and intrastate supplies. So if the location of the supplier and the place of supply are in the same state, it is intrastate. If the location of the supplier and the place of supply are in the two different states, two different union territories, or state or union territory, it is a interstate supply. We will go into the definition of location of the supplier, place of supply in when you're talking about the place of supply session. This is just an overview, just to understand. Thumb rule is only two: location of the supplier and place of supply. If these two are in the two different places, interstate, same state is intrastate. The following supplies will be treated as interstate: supplies between two states or union territories, goods imported into the territory of India. So any import or export will be interstate supply. Now supplies to tourist under section 15 of the IGST Act is an interstate supply. Now what are these tourists referred to under section 15? You know, if you go to many of the foreign countries like in Singapore or you go to Bangkok, what you see is you can get the credit or you can get the refund of the taxes paid for the goods purchased in that country. So if you come out, if you go into that airport before crossing the customs frontier or before getting inside, there is a counter where you get the refund of your taxes. You have to show the receipt. Even the GST in our country also has got that provision, but for only for goods. So section 15 of the IGST Act, it is not still implemented. It is there in the act only. Government has not still brought the rules how the tourists are going to take the refund. But there is a provision where a tourist comes, you have to give him a bill, but he has to give the passport and say he's a foreigner and he is going to travel and he's not going to stay for long in India. So he will be demanding that bill of IGST, which he will go to the airport and get the refund. So supplies to tourists under section 15 for claiming that refund is it's interstate. Import of services also interstate. Export of goods and services also it is interstate. Now, this is an example of interstate and intrastate. So suppose a location of the supplier is Delhi, place of supply also Delhi. So you charge CGST plus SGST, that is intrastate supply. Location of the supplier is Delhi. Place of supply is Maharashtra. Two different states. So it is an interstate transaction. So if there is an interstate transaction, it is IGST. Intrastate, it is SGST, CGST and SGST. If it is a union territory, CGST and UTGST. Now, I will give you a twist and you have to answer me. Suppose the location of the supplier is in Delhi. Customer is in Delhi, but the goods move to Maharashtra. He is telling, I have got my customer, you deliver it to Maharashtra. So the goods movement is happening from Delhi to Maharashtra. This is out of syllabus for today. I just want to get the feel of the participants, how much they know a little bit of GST. So I'm just throwing this out of syllabus question, which is location of the supplier is Delhi, goods moving to Maharashtra, customer actually is in Delhi. It is an intrastate transaction or interstate transaction. Interstate. Remember what I'm telling? Customer is in Delhi. Location of the supplier is Delhi. Goods moving to Maharashtra. Interstate or intrastate? Intrastate, interstate. Okay. Interstate, intrastate, interstate. Okay. So most of them are telling, okay, I think 50-50, you can say 50% are telling interstate, 50% are telling intrastate. Okay. Since I told it is out of syllabus, if you refer to section 10(1)(b) of IGST Act, if you are delivering a material on the direction of the customer, so the place of supply of the customer is the place of supply. So I had given the thumb rule, location of the supplier, place of supply. If they are in the same state, it is intrastate. If they are in the two different states, it is interstate. Here, the location of the supplier is Delhi. The place of supply of the customer, who is the customer? Who is paying you the money? The customer is in Delhi, is paying you the money. So his place of supply also Delhi. So location of the supplier and place of supply both are in Delhi. So it is an intrastate supply. Though when goods are moving to Maharashtra to a different state, the nature of the transaction doesn't change. It is an intrastate transaction. So this in the syllabus, it comes in the place of supply so that we can discuss with examples in detail. Now, like I told, Section 9 of the CGST SGST Act and Section 5 of the IGST Act gives power to levy tax. So, Section 9 gives the power to levy tax. And if you see the definition is so wide. It applies to all the supplies of goods or services. So, all the supplies of goods or services, or both, other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption, shall attract CGST, SGST, whatever that, if it is a inter. So all supplies of goods or services or both, other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So if you see, GST is applicable on all the supplies of goods or services except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So alcoholic liquor, if it is used for industry, it is covered under GST. Only if it is consumed by a human being, it is not covered under GST. So Article 366(12)(a) of the Constitution, which was amended in 2016, gives power to levy GST on goods and services except alcoholic liquor. Now, Section 9 gives power to tax on all supplies of goods and services on what value? It says value determined as per Section 15 of the CGST. So there has to be a tax and value has to be determined. So what is that value is determined as per Section 15 of CGST Act. On what rate? Tax rate should be how much? So what they have told, they have given the maximum rate. So they have told maximum rate should be 20%. 20% in CGST, 20% in SGST, IGST is 40%. So a GST tax rate can never exceed 40%. Paid by whom? It should be paid by the taxable person. So only a taxable person shall pay GST. And tax should be collected. How it should be collected? It should be collected in the manner prescribed as per CGST rules. So Section 9, the levy power gives power to tax on all suppliers of goods and services on the value determined as per section 15 on the tax rate which should not exceed 40% should be paid by the taxable person. How it should be collected by the government will be prescribed in the GST rules. Section 9(2). So 9(1) gave the power to tax all goods and services. 9(2) and section 5(2). See 9(2) and 5(2) parallelly it runs. One goes as per CGST Act. Whatever 9(2) CGST Act, 9(2) in SGST Act also will remain the same. That is the state GST and central GST. The section 9, most of the sections will remain the same. And section 5(2) of IGST Act, parallelly it goes. So what it gives, 9(2), it says petroleum products will be brought into GST on the recommendation of the GST Council in the future date. So petroleum products are into GST already, but they have not notified. This will be notified on the recommendation of the GST Council. So petroleum, crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, all these petroleum products will be brought in. Maybe they will bring in first aviation turbine fuel, then they may bring in natural gas. So I think one item they may bring into GST. They may not bring everything into GST at one shot. So we can soon see aviation turbine fuel coming into the GST network. So it will come in the future date, but it's already there in the GST. So if you see, alcoholic liquor is excluded. So that can never come in GST unless the law changes. Whereas petroleum products can come in just with the notification. 9(3). Now reverse charge. I hope everybody knows about reverse charge. So reverse charge is generally in most of the items in GST, tax has to be paid on forward charge. That is, the person who is supplying has to pay GST. That is, he will collect GST, pay to the government. Whereas in reverse charge, the person who receives pay and the person who supplies doesn't pay. So section 9(3) of the CGST Act and 5(3) of the IGST Act gives power to the government to notify specified categories of supply of goods and services, the tax on which shall be paid by the recipient on reverse charge. So 9(3) actually gives power to the government on specified categories of supply of goods and services. So it is not on the specified person, it is on the specified goods or specified services on which reverse charge will be applied and the recipient will pay the tax. So goods, there is a notification number 4 where they mention the goods on which reverse charge will be has to be paid. Service, it is notification number 13. So this reverse charge, we have got a separate topic, one session. So we will not go in detail. So power is given as per section 9(3) to charge reverse charge. There was something called 9(4). That also reverse charge, which was implemented. When it was implemented, it was a big hue and cry because that section 9(4) told if you purchase something from an unregistered person, you have to pay tax. That is, the recipient has to pay tax. That means if I buy something from a person who is unregistered or who doesn't have GST number, then I pay tax for what I purchase. When the GST was launched, means it had become a nightmare for the people to find out from whom they have purchased without a bill or without a GST number. So what they did is they extended the date and they brought in a limit of 5,000 rupees. They told 5,000 rupees per day you can purchase from an unregistered person, no tax. So per day limit of 5,000 was fixed, but that also was creating a problem because how much a person will check today whether they have crossed 4,999 and as soon as they cross 5,000 then reverse charge applies. So it was becoming a compliance issue. So till 31st January 2019, they kept this 9(4) under abeyance. That notification came from 13th October 2017. So from that date till 31st January 2019, this section was kept in abeyance and they told you did not pay reverse charge if it is purchased from unregistered dealer. Finally, from 1/2/2019, they changed 9(4) and they told it is not applicable for the purchases for all the supplies received from unregistered dealers, it will be applied for only class or registered or class of registered persons or specified goods or services they will notify, and only on those goods and services or class of people this section will be applicable. So this section got notified. Again, we will cover this goods and services in later session, but want to have a feel. Goods, can someone tell me which goods are covered under this section where if you buy from an unregistered person, you have to pay tax? Can someone tell which goods? So if you buy this goods from an unregistered dealer, you have to pay tax. Any idea? A wild guess? Sugarcane, no. Sugarcane comes under 9.3. I'm talking about 9.4. 9.3, they have specified that tobacco product, agriculture, all those comes under 9.3. I am asking 9.4, where if you buy from an unregistered person. Buy from unregistered person. Hardware imports, no. No raising hand, only message. Somebody has raised hand. Arvind, I'll come back next. Capital goods, no. Not yet notified. No, it's notified. I think currently there is no notification yet. Okay. Cement. Promoter, builder buying cement from an unregistered person. You have to pay 100% GST on reverse charge as per section 9.4, which is notified. And if you are a promoter or a builder, 80% of your purchases has to be from registered person. If anything short of 80%, you have to pay for the shortfall of 80%. If suppose it's 70%, 10% you have to pay under reverse charge. So there is a mechanism which will come back. So cement is notified. Services, any idea? Services? 9.4, you are all telling about 9.3. 9.3 only GTA, all other reverse charge services, all 9.3. I am talking about 9.4. If you buy from you receive from an unregistered person. 9.4. 9.3 is by default, it has to be on reverse charge, whether it is registered or unregistered. Whereas 9.4 is if you get supplies from unregistered person. 9.4 services, any idea? Transportation? No. GTA? No. GTA, I told it is 9.3. 9.4 is what I am talking about. It is related to the same goods I was talking about. Service also related to that sector only. I give a hint. Promoter services, no. Contract labor, no. Construction services, no. Architect, no. Somebody give me right answer here. JDA, Joint Development Agreement. Word of it? JDAs. So if you're having a joint development agreement, and joint development agreement, you give your land for joint development to the promoter. So the promoter has to pay tax on reverse charge for the portion of the land developer, which land developer can take the credit if he's selling the property. So that 9(4), because the sale of land as per schedule 2, which again will come back, is services. So services and 9(4) is JDA contracts. Don't break too much of your head. This all services are going to get covered today. What we are discussing is only the, I think only the top portion. So we are not going into subject wise. It's just a general overview. Tax to be paid by e-commerce operator. So 9(1) we finished, 9(2) we finished, 9(3) we finished, 9(4) we finished, 9(5). 9(5) is tax to be paid by e-commerce operators. So there is a specific category of services, the tax government will say or notify, which has to be paid by the e-commerce operator if it is supplied through it. So TCS provisions are applicable. So I'll take these two subjects separately. So TCS provision, now what happens, suppose it is a Amazon. Now some supplier is supplying goods to a customer through Amazon. Amazon, what happens? He sells the product. That means he collects the money from the customer and deducts his commission and gives the balance to the seller. Now, in this situation, there is a TCS provision. That is, if you are supplying through an e-commerce operator, money also is collected through e-commerce operator. The e-commerce operator has to deduct TCS and give, after deducting TCS, the balance portion to the supplier. So TCS provision is applicable for goods as well as services supplied through e-commerce operator, whereas 9(5), government has notified few services, category of services, where tax itself will be paid by the e-commerce operator. It's not TCS provision. Tax itself will be paid by the e-commerce operator. So if I am supplying, I'll come to the examples in the next slide. So it will be clear for you. So 9(5) is category of services, tax will be paid by the e-commerce operator if such services are supplied through it. So if 9(5) is applicable, then TCS provision is not applicable. So on those services where e-com operator pays the taxes, TCS provision is not applicable. Now, which are those services? Services by way of transportation of passengers by radio taxi, motor cab, maxi cab, and motorcycle. That is services of Uber, Ola, this kind of services. If the taxi driver or the owner or the person who is providing the service, the taxi person, through Uber, even though is registered or unregistered, Uber has to pay the taxes for the services given. So any transportation of passengers by radio taxi or by motor cab, maxi cab, and motorcycle. So any of these four mode of conveyance through e-commerce operator will pay the tax. Services provided for accommodation, hotels, inns, guest house, clubs, campsites, or other commercial places meant for residential or lodging purposes, except where the person supplying such services through e-commerce operator is liable for registration under GST. So Make My Trip, or you have got this hotel sites, hotel booking sites. So if you have got a hotel which is not registered, so here the difference between the first point and second point is, in Uber, the taxi driver may be registered or not registered, but Uber or Ola will pay the tax. Whereas here, MakeMyTrip or any other e-commerce operator like MakeMyTrip, if he receives services or there are hotels which is unregistered only, MakeMyTrip will pay the tax. So if your registered person is supplying through MakeMyTrip, he did not pay. So he has to keep a track who is registered, not registered. Registered, the person who is supplying will pay the tax. Not registered, MakeMyTrip will pay the tax. Recently, they have included, that is in August of last year, they included this, where services by way of housekeeping such as plumbing, carpentering, etc. So any housekeeping work, where again, if it is unregistered and supplied through e-commerce operator will pay the tax. Like Urban Clap, which is Urban Company now. So Urban Company, any housekeeping activities supplied by an unregistered person through this Urban Company will pay the tax on behalf of the person who is supplying the services. Hope I'm clear. Now, a quick run through the utilization of input tax credit, because since we have spoken about the flow of credit, how the credit, how there is a seamless credit. So how the input tax credit will be utilized in the GST regime. CGST can be adjusted only with CGST. SGST will be adjusted against SGST. SGST can be adjusted against IGST also. So I have given here. So CGST can be adjusted against actually CGST and IGST. SGST can be adjusted against SGST, then IGST. IGST can be adjusted against IGST, CGST, SGST, UTGST. Now, utilization of GST credits. There has been a lot of changes, lot of confusion, and I think most of the taxpayers do mistakes also while utilizing or adjusting their credits with their output liability. So I've given some examples. For these examples I've told in detail, we'll discuss in next session, though this is just a understanding purpose. Now from March 2019, the rule is IGST credit has to be completely exhausted first. Then only you can use CGST and HGST. Hope I'm clear. So you have got an IGST input credit available. First, utilize that with IGST, finish it off. Still, if something balance is there, you can in any order either use it fully for CGST, use it fully for SGST, or use it partly for CGST, partly for SGST, depending on your mood and your analysis. So IGST has to be first exhausted. So first you finish IGST with IGST, then CGST, SGST in whatever proportion. Then you left over with CGST and SGST. Then go to CGST. First finish off CGST output types. Still, if something is available, you can set off IGST. Similarly, SGST, first set off SGST. If anything is available, it will be set off against IGST. Am I clear? Hope I am getting yes, no? Or you want to explain me for more on this? Any confusion? Yeah, so I knew there will be some confusion. So I have given some examples. So if you see here, so there are some 2-3 examples which I have given, so it will make you clear. So there is an output tax liability of IGST 1,20,000, CGST 90,000, SGST 90,000. So there is an output tax liability of separately 1,20,000 and 1,80,000. That is 3 lakh rupees output tax liability. Breakup is 1,20,000, 90, 90. Input tax credit is CGST 1 lakh, SGST 1 lakh, and IGST also 1 lakh. So first, what is the rule? First, exhaust IGST. So IGST credit, you have got 1 lakh. So IGST credit first, it should be fully used for clearing your IGST first. IGST is 1,20,000, right? So 1,20,000 your output tax liability, you exhaust 1 lakh. So you remain 1 lakh you have adjusted. So there is nothing left in IGST credit. Then as soon as you finish IGST, second you have to come to CGST. So CGST you have got 1 lakh. So So CGST first where you will utilize. CGST first it has to be utilized for CGST output tax. So CGST output tax is 90,000. So you first 90,000 you use for CGST, you remain 10,000. Next should be IGST. So you use 10,000 IGST. So it's cleared. Second, again you come to SGST. Now SGST there is a output tax, there is input credit of 1 lakh. First SGST should be used for SGST output, that is 90,000. So 90,000 you have used. Again there is a 10,000 balance which can be used for next is IGST. So you have a look at it, see if you have understood. Any confusion, say yes or no, or little confusion. Please explain once again. I got more examples. I'll come to one more example. Now here what I do, now that output tax liability has reduced. Now it has become 80,000, 60,000, 60,000. So it has become 2 lakhs now. So 80,000, 60,000, 60,000. I have got IGST of 1 lakh credit, CGST 1 lakh, SGST 1 lakh. Now IGST is first I have to utilize. So IGST 1 lakh, first it has to be used for IGST. So 1 lakh, 80,000 IGST, I use 80,000. I remain balance 20,000. This 20,000 I can use for CGST, SGST in whatever proportion. This example I have used 20,000 for SGST. So I have exhausted IGST. As soon as I exhaust IGST, I come to CGST. CGST I have got a credit of 1 lakh, payable of 60,000 rupees on CGST. First I'll use CGST. So I use 60,000 CGST. I remain with 40,000. There is no IGST balance because everything is utilized. So 40,000 is carried forward. Then next comes to SGST. SGST 1 lakh is there. Payable SGST 60,000. Already utilized, you have already used 20,000 from IGST. So whatever balance is 40,000, I use 40,000. Balance 60,000 of SGST is carried forward. Am I clear? Clear now? So that IGST can be exhausted in any manner, like we can. I'm coming to that next example. It is with a little change. Okay. So here, the same example, instead of 20,000 using it for SGST, I have used 10,000 for CGST, 10,000 for SGST. Now what has happened? Instead of 40-60 of CGST and SGST here, it has become 50-50. Even though 1 lakh is carried forward, CGST and SGST has been carried forward in equal proportion. Yes? Having balance on CGST credit, reducing the working capital issues. There is no payable here. There is no cash outflow. Cash outflow is 0. The credit is getting carried forward. So if you see ITC only getting carried forward, there is no cash outflow for the company. Here? Yeah, so we'll just jump to one more example. Now here, there is a tax liability. So I just want to highlight this point also. So if there is a output tax liability of 95,000 plus 13,000, 13,000. So first IGST 1 lakh rupees, I'll exhaust 95,000 rupees, 5,000 balance, 5,000 I will first adjust SGST. So it's my wish, I adjusted. Here we are seeing how you can now, Surendra had raised a point telling there is a working capital issue. So here I'm giving an example how a working capital can be actually adjusted if you plan properly. So in this example, I have adjusted that 5,000 rupees in SGST. So I exhausted IGST. Now I go to CGST. 10,000 is there. I exhaust CGST completely. So I don't have 10,000. I don't have anything balance. Still there is a 3,000 rupees CGST which I have to pay. So I have to pay cash of 3,000 CGST. SGST I come 10,000 rupees credit. In 13,000 already 5,000 IGST adjusted, 8,000. So 2,000 carried forward of SGST. So in this example, 3,000 rupees I pay from my pocket as cash, and SGST there is a balance of 2,000 rupees also. So there is a credit which gets carried forward. I pay cash, there is a working capital issue. Same example, if you go and adjust that 5,000 rupees into 2,500, 2,500. Instead of completely 5,000 rupees in SGST, I split that into 50-50. Then see, there is no carried forward of SGST, whereas instead of 3,000 rupees, I pay only 500 as cash. Am I clear? So I want to hear from everyone if it's clear, or I have to explain once again. Others? Yes, clear, clear. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Right. So now, any questions? Whatever we have spoken now, some questions, if anybody has got in their mind, they can ask. They can, in the chat itself, they can ask, so I can answer. No questions? Sir, how will TCS applicable for a reseller of hardware or software? Hardware or software? Hardware or software? Through e-commerce operator? Through e-commerce operator. No, hardware and resellers, you're telling he is a hardware and software reseller. So TCS provision on what? Means for him it is a normal GST, right? There is no TCS provision. TCS provision applicable only in two scenarios. One is if he is supplying through e-commerce operator. Second is if he is supplying to government. There are some list of government departments, government authority, government companies. So if you are supplying to government departments or through e-commerce operator, only TCS applicable or TDS applicable. So this scenario I didn't understand. He is supplying hardware and software. So TCS, how it is applicable? In my view, it's not applicable. But anyway, TCS, we are going to cover it separately, section 52 and 51. Yeah. Any other question related to today's topic on maybe GST? What do you say? We had spoken about overview of GST today, or whether GST is good, bad, ugly. So any questions related to that, or levy and collection? Because we'll be talking about taxable event supply. See how what is the definition of supply? There are some serious things which will be discussed on 10th. So we may go a little technical. I'll keep it simple, but it will be more technical. So today we have just gone on general things on GST. So we didn't go on subject except on levy. So anything on levy or GST, which any particular question? So if no questions today, we can stop the session today. We can close the session today. Valuation, will you cover in a separate topic? Most probably, yes. Valuation is an important topic. I think it is covered. Done. So I think I request everyone to take notes. And if you have any separate if any questions are there, you can post it to us or send a WhatsApp also, so we can try to clarify on that. So thanks for coming for the session. I assure you, all the future sessions will be, we will try to do our best so that we can make you understand, and whatever the latest trends are there, latest changes in GST, we will try to bring it. And if you have any apprehensions or any query, please write to us. We will come back to you, and let us all together make this program a success and ensure after this 15 hours, something you gain, something you know about GST. And in whichever line you are, whether you are in industry, whether you are a student, or you are a practicing professional, today or for this session, we are all students. I am learning, you are learning, we are all students, and we have to learn a lot. And after this program, at least we'll know, we know the basics. And if anybody asks us questions, we'll say, okay, we know the basics about GST. So that what I want is, tomorrow you should not get misled by a wrong advice or a wrong suggestion given by somebody. At least the basics you should know. So I've actually noted down all the topics in such a way that at least the basics you know. So I request everyone to join all the sessions and get benefited from that. And YouTube channel, YouTube also will be available, recordings will be available, but doing a live session is always better than hearing a recorded one, because recorded one, always you try to fast forward or your mind may get distracted. Whereas hearing a live session will always keep you involved in the program. So try to attend the live program. If for any chance you cannot attend the live program, hear the recorded versions. We are giving whatever possible from our side. So thank you very much for joining. And on 10th, on 7th, we will have a detailed 1.5 programs on taxable event and the topic, whatever is discussed. So let us close for now and enjoy your day. Thank you.